Have you ever wondered what would happen if Darth Vader ruled over Mandalore? Today we are going to explore the galaxy far, far away to discover what would happen if the major events from the universe were altered. What if Cal Kestis became Vader's apprentice? How about if Vader had teamed up with Thrawn? We will explore all these questions and more as we ponder, what if? What if Darth Vader had an upgraded suit? The dim light of Vader's meditation chamber cast long shadows on his black armor. He sat motionless, his respirator hissing rhythmically, his mind lost in thought. Ever since the encounter with Grand Admiral Thrawn years ago, Vader had been intrigued by the rare material known as cortosis. Its unique properties, resisting lightsabers and rendering them temporarily inert, had stuck in his mind as a potential tool. For years, Vader had served as the Emperor's enforcer, but his thoughts often drifted to freedom. Freedom from Sidious's iron grip. If he were to challenge the Dark Lord, he would need more than his mastery of the Force. He would need an edge, something that could withstand not just Palpatine's lightsaber, but his devastating Force lightning. Now, deep within his castle on Mustafar, Vader's plan was coming to fruition. The laboratory deep beneath Vader's fortress was abuzz with activity. Droid engineers and technicians worked tirelessly under the Sith Lord's watchful gaze. Cortosis, or mine from the depths of Lothal during his mission with Thrawn, had been refined and forged into plates of sleek, dark armor. Vader raised his hand, inspecting one of the finished pieces. The matte black cortosis shone faintly under the sterile lights, an unassuming appearance that belied its formidable properties. The modifications went beyond the armor. The suit was now lighter, granting him increased mobility without sacrificing durability. Its internal systems had been overhauled, offering improved life support and heightened physical augmentation. Most importantly, Vader had ensured the removal of materials that made him vulnerable to Force lightning, a deliberate move to counter his master's deadliest weapon. As the droids secured the final plates of armor to his body, Vader flexed his mechanical fingers. The suit felt powerful. He activated his lightsaber, watching the crimson blade hum against the cortosis plating. As expected, the blade flickered and died upon contact, rendered inert by the energy-absorbing properties of the material. Yes, Vader rumbled. This will do. Vader sought to test his new suit. His hunt brought him to the jungle world of Felucia, a planet teeming with vibrant, alien flora and dangerous fauna. Quinlan Vos had been spotted here, using his psychometry to uncover and destroy Imperial supply chains. A surviving Jedi, Vos was as elusive as he was skilled, and Vader relished the challenge. The dense jungle closed in around him as Vader moved silently through the undergrowth. The new suit sensors fed him a steady stream of information, mapping the terrain and detecting life forms. Every step he took was deliberate, his presence an oppressive weight in the Force that spread terror through the wildlife. Quinlan Vos sensed him before he saw him. Meditating atop a jagged cliff, Vos opened his eyes and frowned. "So, you've come," he murmured. Igniting his green lightsaber, Vos leaped down from his perch, his movements fluid and precise. "I don't know what monstrosity you've made yourself into, Vader, but it doesn't matter. I won't run." "You will die," Vader replied coldly, his crimson blade snapping to life. Vos attacked with a ferocity that would have overwhelmed most opponents. His acrobatics and precision strikes forced Vader onto the defensive, their blades clashing in a dazzling display of light and sparks. But when Vos's blade struck the cortosis armor, it sputtered and deactivated. "What?" Vos gasped, flipping backward to regain distance and reignite his lightsaber. Vader advanced methodically, his movements slower but deliberate. "Your weapon is useless against me." Vos gritted his teeth, shifting tactics. He leaped into the air, using the Force to hurl a massive boulder at Vader. The Dark Lord raised his hand, catching the projectile mid-flight and sending it hurtling back. Voss barely avoided the impact, rolling to the side. "You can't win, Voss," Vader intoned, slashing through the dense vegetation to reach his quarry. Voss reached out with the Force, pulling down a thick canopy of vines and branches to entangle Vader. But the Sith Lord's armor resisted the crushing weight, and with a burst of energy, he tore through the obstruction. Vader extended his hand, gripping Voss with an unyielding Force choke. The Jedi dropped his saber, clawing at his throat. "Your efforts are meaningless," Vader said, his voice colder than the grave. "You cannot escape the power of the dark side." Voss's vision blurred as he struggled against the crushing grip. Summoning the last of his strength, he hurled a wave of Force energy, breaking Vader's hold and sending the Sith Lord stumbling back. "You'll have to do better than that," Voss said, panting. Vader's response was a surge of dark energy that threw Voss against a tree with bone-shattering force. As the Jedi crumpled to the ground, Vader approached, igniting his lightsaber once more. "No," Voss muttered, his strength failing him. Vader raised his blade, and with a swift, merciless strike, ended the Jedi's life. Back aboard his Star Destroyer, Vader stood in his meditation chamber, his mind racing. The battle had proven the worth of his new armor, but it also confirmed his suspicions. Palpatine's rule was fragile. The Emperor had relied on secrecy and manipulation, and Vader now possessed the means to shatter that foundation. He clenched his fist, the cortosis plating glinting in the dim light. "Your time will come, my master," he vowed. "The Sith will rise under my rule." Vader's new armor struck fear into the hearts of his enemies, but it also drew the attention of the Emperor. Sidious, ever watchful, began to sense his apprentice's growing ambition. On Naboo, in a hidden vault beneath Theed, Palpatine reviewed schematics for his own new plans. "Let him plot," the Sith Lord mused to himself, a sinister smile crossing his lips. "The dark side is eternal, and I am its master." The throne room aboard the Emperor's personal Star Destroyer, Eclipse, was a dark and oppressive place. The walls were adorned with crimson banners, and the cold durasteel floor reflected the flickering light of the room's oversized viewscreen. Darth Vader stood at the entrance, his presence a towering shadow against the dim light. Emperor Palpatine sat on his throne, his fingers steepled. His hood cast a shadow over his pale, wrinkled face, but his yellow eyes glinted with curiosity. "Ah, Lord Vader," Palpatine greeted, his voice smooth and calculating. "You come unbidden. What urgent matter compels you to disturb me?" Vader stepped forward, his heavy boots echoing ominously. "The galaxy will not bend to your rule forever. Your vision of power is flawed." Palpatine chuckled softly. "A bold claim. But I sense something new about you, my apprentice. Confidence, perhaps? Or is it defiance?" The Sith Lord rose from his throne, his frail appearance belying the immense power that radiated from him. "Do you mean to challenge me, Lord Vader?" Vader ignited his crimson lightsaber. "Your time has passed, my master. The dark side belongs to me now." Palpatine laughed, a guttural, menacing sound that reverberated through the room. With a flick of his wrist, his own red blade ignited. "You dare challenge the dark side itself?" Vader lunged, his blade slashing downward with immense power. Palpatine sidestepped with uncanny speed, countering with a flurry of strikes. The throne room filled with a hum and crackle of lightsabers as the two Sith dueled with ferocious intensity. Vader's cortosis armor proved its worth as Palpatine's blade glanced off it, momentarily shorting out. But Sidious anticipated this, using the momentary deactivation to hurl a blast of Force lightning. The lightning struck Vader's armor but dissipated harmlessly. The Sith Lord pressed his advantage, his strikes relentless and calculated. "Your tricks will not save you," Vader growled. Palpatine snarled, his yellow eyes burning with fury. "You underestimate me, as all apprentices do." Sidious raised both hands, summoning a torrent of force energy that tore apart the room. Chunks of durasteel flew through the air, and the throne itself was crushed under the pressure. Vader stumbled but recovered quickly, his armor shielding him from much of the destruction. The two combatants circled each other, the force rippling between them. Sidious grinned. "You have become strong, Lord Vader, but you are still a shadow of your former self. Do you truly believe you can defeat me?" Vader did not respond with words. Instead, he unleashed a powerful force push that sent Sidious hurtling into a wall. The Emperor recovered mid-air, landing gracefully and retaliating with another lightning strike, this time infused with enough energy to shatter the room's reinforced glass viewport. The vacuum of space loomed, but emergency shields snapped into place, stabilizing the environment. Sidious used the distraction to leap toward Vader, his blade slashing with deadly precision. Vader caught the strike with his own blade, locking the two in a deadly stalemate. "The dark side is mine," Vader roared, using his immense strength to overpower his former master. But Palpatine's grin only widened. "You think the dark side serves you, but you serve it. And through it, you serve me." Before Vader could respond, Palpatine unleashed a massive wave of dark energy, sending Vader crashing into the shattered remnants of the throne. The Cortosis armor absorbed much of the impact, but the blow rattled the Sith Lord. Sidious stood over him, his lightsaber poised for the killing strike. "You have grown arrogant, my apprentice. That will be your undoing." Vader, summoning every ounce of his power, extended his hand and caught Sidious in a force choke. The Emperor's eyes widened in genuine surprise as he was lifted off the ground. "You are nothing without me," Sidious rasped, struggling against the invisible grip. Vader's grip tightened. "Then I will be nothing." But before Vader could finish the job, a surge of dark energy erupted from Sidious, throwing him across the room. Sidious landed, coughing but alive. "You disappoint me, Lord Vader," Sidious said, retreating toward a hidden exit. "You are powerful, but not enough." Palpatine disappeared into the shadows, his presence fading from Vader's senses. Alone in the ruined throne room, Vader deactivated his lightsaber and clenched his fist. The fight had been a draw, but it had proven one thing: the Emperor could be defeated. He was not invincible. Vader stared out at the stars, his thoughts racing. "One day, you will fall," he vowed, "and it will be by my hand." Back on Mustafar, Vader sat in his meditation chamber, plotting his next move. His confrontation with Sidious had exposed his limitations, but it had also revealed the cracks in the Emperor's armor. Far away, on Exegol, Sidious stood before a massive cloning tank, his face twisted in anger. "The apprentice has grown strong," he mused, "but strength alone will not save him." The galaxy remained in the grip of darkness, but a storm was brewing. Two Sith Lords, master and apprentice, prepared for their final reckoning. What if Darth Vader's mask contained a fragment of his soul? The sterile chamber on Mustafar echoed with the hum of machinery. Darth Vader stood at its center, his imposing figure bathed in the flickering red light of molten lava visible through the fortress's windows. He held his helmet in his gloved hands, its cold, black surface reflecting the faint shimmer of his yellow, corrupted eyes. Vader's breathing was labored, even without the mask. The exertion of his dark side rituals had pushed his ravaged body to its limits. Before him, on an obsidian altar, lay a Sith holocron, its pulsating light casting ominous shadows across the room. He placed the helmet on the altar, his hands trembling slightly, not with fear or hesitation, but with the immense concentration required for what he was about to attempt. The holocron's light grew brighter, and the chamber filled with a low, droning sound as Vader extended his hands over the helmet. "The galaxy will remember me," he intoned, his voice deep and resonant. "Even if I fall, my will shall endure." The Force swirled violently, a storm of dark energy centered on the helmet. Vader closed his eyes, his mind diving deep into the abyss of the Force. He reached into the core of his being, pulling at the very essence of his soul. It was excruciating, like tearing apart flesh and bone, but he did not falter. As the fragment of his soul detached, Vader's knees buckled. He gripped the altar for support, his mechanical breathing now ragged and uneven. The fragment, a shimmering wisp of crimson energy, hovered in the air before slowly seeping into the helmet. The metal seemed to absorb it, glowing faintly before the light faded entirely. "It is done," Vader whispered, his voice filled with grim satisfaction. The helmet now contained a part of him, his essence, his anger, his hatred. It was more than armor. It was a vessel of his will, ensuring that Darth Vader would live on, even if his body were destroyed. Vader lifted the helmet, staring into the empty eye sockets as if gazing into the reflection of his own soul. He placed it on his head, sealing himself in darkness once more. From that moment on, the mask was no longer just a tool for survival. It was a talisman, a relic of Sith power, and a curse upon the galaxy. The cantina on Tanel 5 was dimly lit, its patrons a mix of smugglers, bounty hunters, and traders who thrived on the chaos left behind by the fall of the Empire. Luke Skywalker sat at a corner table, his hood drawn up, nursing a drink he had no intention of finishing. The Force guided his every move, faint whispers leading him across the galaxy. A figure approached, a Rodian informant that Luke had paid handsomely for information. The alien slid into the seat opposite him, glancing nervously around the room before speaking in a hushed tone. "They say the Dark One leads them," the Rodian said, his voice barely audible over the clinking of glasses and quiet hum of conversation. "A man in black, like the one from the Empire. They call him Vader." Luke's chest tightened. "Where is he?" The Rodian hesitated. "Rumors say he's gathered the remnants of the fleet in the Outer Rim. A world called Garrel. That's all I know." Luke nodded, sliding a credit chip across the table. The Rodian snatched it up and disappeared into the crowd. Luke leaned back, his mind racing. Could it be possible? Vader was gone. He had seen it himself, felt it in the Force. But the whispers persisted, growing louder with each passing day. He returned to his X-Wing and set a course for Garrel. The journey was quiet, save for R2-D2's occasional chirps of concern. "I know R2," Luke said, his voice tinged with unease. "I feel it too." When he arrived at Garrel, the planet loomed ominously in the viewport. Its surface was dotted with military installations, and orbiting above it were remnants of the Imperial Navy, a fleet cobbled together from surviving star destroyers and smaller cruisers. Luke landed his X-Wing in a secluded canyon, masking his presence in the Force. He moved through the shadows, avoiding patrols as he made his way to the main compound. The whispers guided him to a massive rally. Thousands of troopers in mismatched armor stood in formation, their attention fixed on a raised platform. And there he was. The man in black armor stepped forward, his helmet a replica of Darth Vader's. The crowd roared as he raised a gloved fist, igniting a crimson lightsaber. Luke's breath caught as the Force struck him with an overwhelming sense of familiarity. This was no mere pretender. This man bore the essence of his father, raw power, unyielding darkness. "No," Luke whispered, his voice trembling. "It can't be." The man turned, as if sensing Luke's presence. Their eyes locked, and Luke felt the weight of the dark side pressing down on him. He ignited his lightsaber, but before he could act, blast of fire erupted around him. The crowd surged, and Luke was forced to retreat. He fought his way back to the canyon, deflecting bolts with precision. R2-D2 had already prepped the X-Wing, and as Luke launched into the sky, the man in black watched him go, his helmet tilted in silent contemplation. Back on Chandrila, Luke stood before Leia in her office. Her brow furrowed as he recounted what he had seen. "Vader," she repeated, disbelief etched on her face. "It's not him," Luke said. "But it's something. A fragment, perhaps. And he has an army." Leia's expression hardened. "We can't ignore this. If the remnants of the Empire rally behind him, it could undo everything we've fought for." She contacted Admiral Akbar, who immediately began mobilizing the New Republic Navy. A strike force was assembled, with Luke leading the ground assault. The New Republic fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a hammer, emerging against the backdrop of the Outer Rim planet Gerrel. At its head was Admiral Akbar's Mon Calamari cruiser, Home 1, its graceful lines belying the devastating firepower it commanded. Around it flew squadrons of X-Wings, Y-Wings, and A-Wings, their pilots ready to carve a path through the remnants of the Imperial fleet. On the Imperial side, an imposing Star Destroyer sat at the heart of the defensive formation, flanked by two smaller Victory-class ships. Waves of TIE fighters poured from their hangars, creating a black cloud of death that surged toward the New Republic forces. Lock S-foils in attack position, Wedge Antilles ordered over comms, his voice calm but resolute. Leading Rogue Squadron, he banked his X-Wing left, dodging a sudden volley of green laser fire. "Snap! Stay on my wing!" A young Temman Snap Wexley, still green but eager, followed Wedge's maneuver with precision. "Right behind you, boss," he called, weaving through the chaos. The starfighters clashed in a dazzling display of agility and firepower. TIE fighters screamed as they swarmed the New Republic ships, their pilots relentless in their defense of Gerrel. Wedge picked off one TIE after another, his targeting computer lighting up with each confirmed kill. "Rogue 3, on your 6. Snap called out, warning Wedge of an incoming TIE. "I see it," Wedge replied, pulling into a tight corkscrew. The pursuing TIE overshot its mark, and Snap took the opportunity to blast it into oblivion. Meanwhile, Home 1 unleashed a broadside against the lead Star Destroyer. The Imperial ship returned fire, its green turbolasers slamming into the Mon Calamari cruiser's shields. Inside the command center, Admiral Akbar barked orders, his large eyes scanning the battlefield. "Focus fire on their shield generators," he commanded. "We need a path cleared for our bombers." A squadron of Y-Wings, escorted by A-Wings, dove toward the Star Destroyer's underbelly. Dodging a flurry of turbolaser fire, the Y-Wings dropped their payload, the explosions sending ripples through the Imperial ship's shields. But the Empire was far from defeated. The Victory-class Star Destroyers moved into flanking positions, unleashing devastating barrages that forced the New Republic fleet into a defensive formation. Snap's X-Wing shook as a stray blast narrowly missed his cockpit. "We're getting pinned down," he yelled, his voice tinged with panic. "Keep it together, Snap," Wedge said, spinning his X-Wing into a daring dive. "We're not out of this yet." As the battle raged in space, Luke Skywalker led his ground team toward the heart of the Imperial compound. The throne room was eerily silent, save for the soft hum of the ventilation systems. Luke stepped forward, his lightsaber igniting with a sharp hiss, its green blade casting a glow that danced off the dark walls. The man in black armor stood at the far end of the room, his crimson blade already ignited. The helmet, identical to Darth Vader's, turned slightly as the figure regarded Luke. "You've come to die, Jedi," the man said, his voice distorted through the mask. "You're not him," Luke said, his grip tightening on his hilt. "You'll never be him." The man lunged without warning, his blade slicing through the air in a deadly arc. Luke met the strike with his own, the clash of their sabers sending sparks flying. The two combatants moved with precision, their movements a deadly dance of strength and speed. Luke's training as a Jedi Master was evident in his fluid strikes and measured defense, but the man's raw aggression was overwhelming. "I am Vader reborn," the man shouted, slamming his saber down in a powerful overhead strike. Luke sidestepped, countering with a quick slash that grazed the man's side. "You're nothing but a pawn," Luke said, his voice steady despite the intensity of the battle. The man roared, unleashing a torrent of wild strikes. Luke parried each one, but the ferocity of the attacks forced him back. A quick flourish sent Luke's saber spinning from his hand, and he barely managed to roll away as the man's blade struck the ground where he had been standing. Summoning the Force, Luke pulled his saber back into his hand just in time to block another strike. He shifted his stance, his focus sharpening. The room trembled as their duel reached its peak, each combatant drawing on the Force to enhance their abilities. The man's strikes grew heavier, but Luke began to exploit openings in his wild form. With a precise slash, Luke disarmed the man, sending his saber clattering to the ground. He stepped forward, his blade pointed at the man's throat. With one swift motion, he removed the mask. The face beneath was young, haunted by fear and confusion. "Torin," Luke said, his voice filled with shock. The young man's eyes met Luke's, tears streaming down his face. "I couldn't stop it," he whispered. "The mask. It controlled me." Luke deactivated his saber and knelt beside him. "It's over now," he said gently. "You're free." Torin sat on the ground, trembling as the weight of his actions washed over him. Luke turned to one of the New Republic soldiers who had just entered, his blaster raised cautiously. "Take him to safety," Luke ordered, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Ensure he's treated fairly." He wasn't in control. The soldier nodded. "Yes, Master Skywalker." Two others joined him, carefully helping Torin to his feet and escorting him out of the compound. Luke exhaled deeply, closing his eyes for a moment. Then, as the rumble of explosions and the faint hum of blaster fire echoed through the walls, his determination hardened. There was still a battle to win. Luke's X-Wing soared into the chaos above Gerrel, its engines screaming as it joined the New Republic fleet. The battle in space had reached a fever pitch, the New Republic starfighters locked in a desperate struggle against the remnants of the Imperial Navy. "Red 5, reporting in," Luke said over the comms, his voice calm but firm. "Red 5. Wedge Antilles replied, surprise in his tone. "Luke, you're a sight for sore eyes." The comm channel crackled with Snap Wexley's voice. "The Jedi's here. Oh, they're in trouble now." Luke's arrival didn't go unnoticed. On the Imperial side, panic spread through the ranks as the rebel hero entered the fray. Whispers of his legendary exploits, the destruction of the Death Star, the duel with Vader and Sidious, filled the comm channels of the TIE pilots. "Skywalker's in the fight," one TIE pilot yelled. "Focus on your objectives," an Imperial officer barked back, but the fear was evident in his voice. Luke's X-Wing sliced through the Imperial formation like a blade, his precise maneuvers unmatched. His first volley of proton torpedoes struck a TIE bomber squadron attempting to target Home 1, sending fiery debris spiraling into the void. "Nice shot," Wedge called out, banking his X-Wing to cover Luke's flank. "Stay tight, Rogue Squadron," Luke instructed. "We can end this." The New Republic fleet capitalized on Luke's arrival. Y-Wings began another bombing run on the Star Destroyer's engines, while A-wings weaved through the TIE swarms, taking out stragglers. "Admiral Akbar," Luke said over the tactical channel, "what's the status of their fleet?" Akbar's gravelly voice came through. "Their flagship is heavily damaged, but they're trying to rally. If we press the attack, we can force a surrender, or destroy them." Luke frowned. "Let's give them a chance to surrender. We've spilled enough blood today." As Luke led an assault on the remaining TIE fighters, he sensed an incoming threat through the Force. "Wedge, snap, break formation. Interceptors on our tail." The two X-wings followed his lead, splitting off just as a squadron of TIE interceptors roared into the fray. Luke spun his X-wing in a corkscrew, weaving through their laser fire with ease. He targeted the lead interceptor, firing a quick burst that obliterated it. Wedge and Snap picked off the others, their coordination seamless. "Red 5, we owe you one," Wedge said, a grin audible in his voice. "Let's finish this," Luke replied. The Star Destroyer's shields finally buckled under the combined assault of the New Republic fleet. Fires raged across its surface as escape pods jettisoned. Some of the smaller Imperial ships attempted to flee into hyperspace, but not all succeeded. One of the Imperial captains, faced with no escape and no hope of reinforcement, activated an open channel. "This is Captain Tredan of the Resolute. We surrender. Cease fire." Cheers erupted across the New Republic fleet. Snap hooped over the comms. "We did it." The battlefield quieted as the remaining Imperial ships powered down their weapons, signaling their surrender. Luke brought his X-wing alongside Wedge's. "We've won the battle," Wedge said. "Thanks to you." Luke shook his head. "Not just me. Everyone played their part." As the fleet regrouped, Luke stared out at the debris-strewn space around Gerrel. The cost of victory weighed heavily on his shoulders, but the New Republic had struck a decisive blow against the remnants of the Empire. Back on his temple world, Luke secured Vader's mask within a heavily fortified vault, layers of protection ensuring it would never be misused again. "I'll keep it safe," he said to himself, his voice resolute. Torin, now free of the mask's influence, stood beside Luke, his expression filled with guilt. "I don't know how I can ever make up for what I've done." "You can," Luke said gently, "by choosing a better path, one step at a time." As Luke walked away, he felt a lingering shadow in the Force. The Sith were gone, but their echoes remained, a reminder that vigilance was always required to protect the light. What if Darth Vader joined Obi-Wan Kenobi on the Death Star? The hum of the Death Star echoed faintly through the dim corridors of Darth Vader's chambers. He sat alone, his meditation pod sealing him away from the outside world. The heavy breathing of his respirator filled the silence, a constant reminder of his broken body, a body he had cursed countless times, but never more than now. Lately, Vader had been plagued by visions that tore at the very foundation of his existence. Images of the Jedi Temple, of his time as Anakin Skywalker, haunted his dreams. He saw Padme's face, her loving eyes staring back at him with sorrow. He heard Obi-Wan's voice echoing in his mind, pleading with him, "You were my brother, Anakin." The pull to the light was relentless, clawing at the edges of his resolve. Vader clenched his fists tightly, his gauntlet fingers trembling under the strain. He was no longer sure if he could distinguish his hatred for Obi-Wan from his desire to see him again. A faint knock on his chamber door snapped him out of his trance. "Lord Vader," came the voice of an officer. "The scanners have detected a ship entering the Death Star's perimeter, a Corellian freighter. Scans are inconclusive, but we believe it may contain the stolen plans." Vader stood, his towering presence causing the officer to stiffen even through the door. "I will deal with it personally," Vader said, his voice cold and final. As he made his way through the Death Star, he felt it, a presence in the Force, one that struck him like a bolt of lightning. It was unmistakable. Obi-Wan Kenobi. For a moment, his steps faltered. Memories surged through him in a torrent, nearly overwhelming his composure. His lightsaber training sessions with Obi-Wan, their missions together during the Clone Wars, their final confrontation on Mustafar, it all came rushing back. The sensation of hope swelled in his chest, and it frightened him. Anakin Skywalker wanted to run to his master, to beg for forgiveness. But Darth Vader was still in control, and he would not allow such weakness. The corridors of the Death Star seemed endless as Vader moved toward the hangar where the Corellian freighter had landed. The Force swirled around him, its whispers growing louder with every step. The presence of Obi-Wan Kenobi was undeniable now, a beacon of familiarity and turmoil. 4 years, Vader had hunted his former master, but now, as the moment neared, doubt gnawed at the edges of his resolve. Inside his chambers, he had felt the light flicker within him, a sensation he had tried to bury. Memories of Padme, Ahsoka, and the Jedi Order had flooded him like a tide he could no longer hold back. It was not hatred that brought him to the hangar. It was desperation. When Vader finally reached the hallway leading to the hangar, Obi-Wan was there, waiting. His brown robes were weathered, his face aged, but his stance was steady. His blue lightsaber was ignited, casting a faint glow on his calm but resolute expression. "Anakin," Obi-Wan said softly, his voice filled with sadness. "I am Darth Vader," he replied, igniting his crimson blade. Yet, the words felt hollow. Obi-Wan lowered his saber slightly. "No, you're not. Not entirely. I can feel it. You're fighting him. You're still in there. Anakin, let me help you." Vader's grip tightened on his weapon. "You think I can be redeemed? After everything I've done?" His voice cracked slightly, betraying his turmoil. "Padme believed so," Obi-Wan said. "I believe so. But you have to want it. You have to fight." The mention of Padme made Vader falter. His saber wavered as his mind was flooded with her final words. "There is still good in him." He could hear her voice as clearly as if she were standing beside him. Suddenly, stormtroopers arrived, weapons drawn. Obi-Wan turned to see Luke, Leia, Han, and Chewbacca rushing toward the Falcon. The troopers raised their blasters, and Obi-Wan leaped into action, deflecting bolts. In the chaos, Vader hesitated, his saber still at his side. The stormtroopers froze in confusion, unsure whether to obey Vader's silence or fire on the Jedi. Obi-Wan turned back to him. "Anakin, you have to choose now. Are you the Emperor's puppet, or are you the man Padme loved?" For a long moment, the room was silent except for the hum of lightsabers and the distant alarm klaxons. Then, Vader extinguished his blade. "Go," Vader said, his voice low, "before I change my mind." The Millennium Falcon roared to life, its engines echoing through the hangar. Obi-Wan guided the others aboard, glancing back to see Vader standing motionless, watching them. "Anakin," Obi-Wan called. "Come with us." Vader hesitated, the conflict in him raging like a storm. Then, as blaster fire erupted from incoming reinforcements, he stepped forward. "I can't." Obi-Wan shook his head. "You can. You must." Finally, with a deep breath, Vader followed them onto the Falcon. The ship lifted off, its thrusters blazing as it shot out of the hangar and into hyperspace. The Falcon landed on the swampy surface of Dagobah, its crew stepping out into the thick mist. Yoda emerged from his hut, leaning on his Jimmer stick. His expression shifted from surprise to deep contemplation as he saw Vader. "Unexpected, this is," Yoda said, his voice calm but firm. "Much darkness still in him, I sense." Obi-Wan stepped forward. "He's here to change, Master Yoda. He's here to redeem himself." Yoda eyed Vader carefully. "Strong the pull of the dark side is. A path difficult. Redemption will be." Vader, now Anakin, nodded. "I know. But I can't live like this anymore." Luke and Leia stood off to the side, watching the exchange. They had only just learned the truth, that Anakin Skywalker was their father. Leia glared at him with a mixture of anger and betrayal, while Luke studied him with cautious hope. As weeks passed on Dagobah, Obi-Wan and Yoda trained Luke and Leia in the ways of the Force. Anakin, meanwhile, struggled to reconnect with the light. He shut himself off from the Force, fearing that the darkness within him would resurface. But Dagobah was alive with the Force, and its power refused to leave him in peace. Anakin experienced vivid visions of Padme, of his time as a Jedi, and of the atrocities he had committed. Each vision forced him to confront the man he had become. One night, Anakin knelt by the swamp, his head bowed. "Padme," he whispered, "I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can ever be the man you believed in." A faint breeze stirred, and for a moment, he thought he heard her voice. "You already are." Anakin sat alone in the swamps of Dagobah, the dense fog curling around him as if the very planet was trying to pull him deeper into its mysteries. He had shut himself off from the Force for weeks, fearing that the darkness within him would re-emerge if he opened himself to it. Yet, Dagobah's raw, untamed connection to the Force wouldn't allow him to hide. The whispers in the shadows, the ripples in the air, all called out to him. As he meditated, Anakin felt the first flicker of the Force brushing against his consciousness. At first, it was faint, like a long-lost friend testing his sincerity. But soon, it grew stronger, tugging at him, urging him to face his inner demons. That night, the visions began. In his first vision, he stood once again on Mustafar. The searing heat of the lava flowed around him as a younger version of himself. Darth Vader at his prime, emerged from the flames. "You think you can escape me?" the apparition hissed, its voice a venomous mix of rage and contempt. "You think the galaxy will forgive you? That you can forgive yourself?" Anakin stood firm, though his heart pounded. "I'm not running from you. I'm confronting what I became." The Vision Vader attacked, crimson lightsaber blazing. Anakin, unarmed, dodged and weaved, refusing to fight. Instead, he focused inward, drawing on the light. The spectre grew more frenzied with every failed strike, its form flickering. Finally, with a burst of radiant energy, Anakin dispelled the apparition, leaving only the quiet crackle of lava. In the days that followed, the tests grew more difficult. Anakin was forced to relive moments of his greatest failures: the slaughter at the Jedi Temple, the loss of Padme, the betrayal of Ahsoka. Each vision was a torment, yet each time, Anakin confronted his pain and guilt head-on. Slowly, he felt the dark tendrils of Vader loosening their grip on him. On the fourth week, Anakin stood in a serene glade on Dagobah, where the Force seemed to hum in harmony. He reached out, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence. The light side of the Force surged through him like a tidal wave, filling the void that had been left by years of darkness. As Anakin reconnected with the Force, he began to observe his children from afar. Luke trained with discipline and focus, his power growing exponentially under Yoda's and Obi-Wan's guidance. Leia was equally gifted, her natural leadership blending seamlessly with her burgeoning Force abilities. Anakin couldn't help but feel immense pride, but this was always tempered by guilt. Leia's anger toward him was palpable, a sharp edge that cut deeper than any blade. She avoided him when possible, and the few times their eyes met, Her expression was cold and distant. He confided in Obi-Wan one night, his voice heavy with regret. "She hates me." "She doesn't hate you," Obi-Wan replied gently. "She's hurt. It will take time." Anakin shook his head. "Time won't fix this. I need to prove to her, and to myself, that I'm more than what I was. I have to face him." Obi-Wan's face fell. "Sidious." Anakin nodded. "It's the only way." Coruscant was shrouded in shadow as Anakin entered the Emperor's throne room. Sidious sat on his raised platform, his yellow eyes gleaming with malice. "Ah, my wayward apprentice," Sidious purred, his voice dripping with mockery. "Or should I say, Skywalker?" Anakin clenched his fists. "I'm not here to serve you. I'm here to end you." The Emperor laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the vast chamber. "End me? Oh, Anakin. You've always been so predictable. Do you think your pitiful return to the light will make you stronger than me? No. You're weaker than ever, clinging to your fragile hope." Sidious rose, his hands crackling with Force lightning. He unleashed a barrage of energy, and Anakin barely managed to deflect it with his lightsaber. Their duel began. Sidious moved with unnatural speed, his crimson blade clashing against Anakin's blue one. The room became a blur of light and shadow as the two titans of the Force battled. Sidious taunted Anakin with every strike, his words cutting deeper than his blade. "You're still the same boy who craved power," Sidious sneered. "You'll never escape me." Anakin gritted his teeth, countering with a ferocious swing that nearly took Sidious's arm. "I don't crave power. I crave redemption." The Emperor cackled. "Redemption? There is no redemption for you." The fight continued, brutal and unrelenting. Anakin fought with everything he had, but Sidious's mastery of the dark side was overwhelming. Finally, Sidious disarmed him and sent him crashing to the ground with a surge of lightning. As the Emperor approached, ready to deliver the killing blow, the throne room doors burst open. Luke and Leia entered, their lightsabers ignited. "No!" Luke shouted, his voice resolute. The twins charged, their combined strength in the Force pushing Sidious back. The Emperor fought desperately, but he was no match for their unity. In a final, coordinated strike, Luke and Leia overwhelmed him, their blades piercing his chest. Sidious let out a horrific scream as he disintegrated into a cloud of dark energy. Anakin lay on the floor, battered and exhausted. Leia stood over him, her saber still ignited. For a moment, he thought she might strike him down. Instead, she deactivated her weapon and extended a hand. "I don't forgive you," she said, her voice trembling. "Not yet. But I'm willing to try. For both of us." Tears welled in Anakin's eyes as he took her hand. "Thank you." Luke helped him to his feet. "We still have a lot of work to do, Father. But you're not alone anymore." Months later, the galaxy began to heal from the Empire's collapse. Anakin chose to live in quiet solitude, dedicating himself to helping others and rebuilding the Jedi Order alongside his children. Though the road to redemption was long and arduous, Anakin Skywalker walked it with determination, knowing that the light he once abandoned had finally brought him home. What if Darth Vader and Grand Admiral Thrawn joined forces against the Emperor? The Chimera glided through hyperspace like a predator stalking its prey. Grand Admiral Thrawn stood silently on the bridge, his crimson eyes focused on the stars streaking past. The air was tense as Thrawn awaited a confrontation that would define the galaxy's future. He had summoned Darth Vader for a private audience, knowing full well the dangers of his revelation. Yet, Thrawn was confident. He always had a plan. When Vader's shuttle arrived, the atmosphere on the Chimera grew heavier. The Dark Lord's presence was suffocating, his mechanical breathing echoing through the corridors as he strode toward the meeting chamber. The stormtroopers stationed along the hall stiffened as he passed, a wave of fear and awe rippling through them. The doors hissed open, and Thrawn turned from the viewport to face Vader. The Sith Lord wasted no time. "Why have you summoned me, Grand Admiral?" Vader's voice was a low growl, the words weighted with impatience. Thrawn clasped his hands behind his back. "Because I believe we share a common goal, Lord Vader. To rid the galaxy of the Emperor." Vader's lightsaber ignited in a flash of crimson, its hum filling the chamber. "You dare speak such treason?" Thrawn remained calm, his expression unchanging. "Treason is only treason if it fails, my lord. You are a man of vision, are you not? Surely, you've seen how the Emperor keeps us all chained. You most of all." The saber hummed closer to Thrawn's throat, but the Grand Admiral didn't flinch. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, as if observing an art piece. "I know who you are, Anakin Skywalker, and I know what the Emperor has taken from you. Would you rather remain his enforcer, or become the ruler of this galaxy?" The air grew colder as Vader's breathing quickened. Slowly, he lowered his weapon but did not deactivate it. "Speak your terms, Grand Admiral. Quickly." Thrawn's smile was faint but triumphant. "Together, we can remove Sidious from power. I will provide the strategy, the tactics, the manipulation of resources. You will provide the strength. In return, I ask for autonomy over the Chiss ascendancy. My people will remain independent, untouched by imperial ambitions." Vader deactivated his lightsaber and took a step back. "If you betray me, you will not live to regret it." Thrawn inclined his head. "Understood. Now, let us begin." Thrawn's plan began with a series of subtle maneuvers. Using his mastery of strategy, he orchestrated a campaign of misinformation to draw the Emperor's focus away from their true intentions. A series of false crises were manufactured, rebellions in distant systems, fabricated attacks on Imperial installations, and the supposed resurgence of old enemies like the Zygerians and Black Sunday. Each crisis was designed to pull resources and attention away from Coruscant. Meanwhile, Thrawn worked closely with Vader to identify key figures within the Empire who could be swayed to their cause. These were officers, governors, and fleet commanders who had grown disillusioned with the Emperor's rule or who simply feared Vader more than they revered Sidious. Among them were Admiral Piet, General Veers, and a cadre of brilliant tacticians who saw in Thrawn a leader who could outmaneuver any opponent. Thrawn's ultimate gambit revolved around the Emperor's greatest blind spot, his overconfidence. "The Emperor believes himself invincible," Thrawn explained during one of their clandestine meetings. "He expects betrayal from his enemies, not his closest servants. That will be his undoing. What is your plan?" Vader demanded. Thrawn activated a holoprojector, displaying the Imperial Palace on Coruscant. "We will draw Sidious out. He is most vulnerable when he believes himself in control. I have already begun planting false intelligence suggesting a coup led by Moffs loyal to the rebellion. This will force him to leave the palace and take command personally." Vader's mechanical breathing filled the silence as he studied the projection. "And when he does," Thrawn's red eyes glimmered, "you will confront him, and you will kill him." The plan unfolded perfectly. Reports of a massive uprising in the core worlds reached the Emperor's ears, each one carefully fabricated by Thrawn's agents. Sidious, suspicious but intrigued, left the safety of his palace to oversee the suppression personally. His fleet was drawn to the mid-rim, leaving Coruscant vulnerable. Vader, meanwhile, prepared for the confrontation. He meditated in his chamber aboard his personal Star Destroyer, focusing his anger and hatred. He knew this would be the ultimate test of his power and his resolve. When Sidious arrived at the mid-rim, he was met with an ambush. Thrawn had positioned the Loyalist forces strategically, trapping the Emperor's fleet in a pincer movement. The battle was fierce, but it was only a distraction. While the Emperor's forces fought to escape, Vader infiltrated Sidious's flagship. The duel between master and apprentice was cataclysmic. Lightning clashed against Crimson Blade as Sidious unleashed the full fury of the dark side. Vader, empowered by years of rage and betrayal, pushed back with unprecedented strength. "Your reign is over, my master," Vader growled as he drove his saber toward Sidious's heart. But Sidious was cunning. He feigned weakness, only to unleash a devastating surge of Force lightning that brought Vader to his knees. "Foolish apprentice," Sidious sneered. "Did you truly think you could challenge me?" Before Sidious could deliver the killing blow, Thrawn's reinforcements arrived. A strike team of elite Chiss warriors infiltrated the flagship, distracting the Emperor long enough for Vader to recover. With a final, ferocious strike, Vader severed Sidious's hands and plunged his lightsaber into the Emperor's chest. The Sith Lord fell, his body consumed by the dark side energy that had sustained him for so long. The galaxy shuddered as the shadow of Darth Sidious was lifted. With Sidious defeated, Vader assumed control of the Empire. He appointed Thrawn as Supreme Commander, entrusting him with the task of solidifying their rule. For a time, it seemed as though their partnership would bring order to the galaxy. But Thrawn had his own agenda. While Vader focused on consolidating power, Thrawn used his newfound authority to weaken the Empire's defenses. Key systems were left vulnerable, and critical supply lines were rerouted to the unknown regions. When the Chiss Ascendancy launched its invasion, the Empire was caught completely off guard. Thrawn stood aboard the Chimera, calmly observing the movements of his newly consolidated fleet. The once loyal officers who sided with Vader had been swiftly and ruthlessly eliminated, replaced with minds Thrawn deemed sharper, more reliable, and loyal to him alone. Across the galaxy, critical systems and military installations fell under Thrawn's control with surgical precision, leaving Vader isolated. The Emperor's throne was now Thrawn's to claim, not for personal ambition, but for the survival and supremacy of the Chiss Ascendancy. On Mustafar, Vader stood amidst the molten rivers of his fortress world, the oppressive heat of the planet amplifying his rage. The loss of the Empire's key systems was an insult he could not bear, but the betrayal by Thrawn burned hotter than any flame on this cursed world. "The fool underestimates me," Vader growled, his voice an ominous bass under the static of his respirator. "He thinks strategy will be enough to defeat the power of the Force." Vader had gathered what few loyal forces he could still muster. He knew the situation was dire, but he would make Mustafar a fortress against the inevitable invasion. While Thrawn's tactical brilliance was unparalleled, Vader's raw power and relentless rage would meet him head-on. Thrawn's fleet emerged from hyperspace, the largest military armada Vader had ever seen. Hundreds of Star Destroyers, TIE fighters, and other vessels orbited Mustafar, their imposing forms blotting out the stars. But what caught Vader's attention most was the ominous weapon mounted on Thrawn's lead Star Destroyer. The weapon was compact yet formidable, a concentrated version of the Death Star's superlaser, a project Thrawn had ensured was finalized by sending schematics to Eli Vanto and the Chiss Ascendancy. Unlike the Empire's clunky, planet-sized Death Star, this weapon could be mounted on a single ship and wield devastating power. In his fortress, Vader issued his commands, determined to hold Mustafar until his dying breath. His remaining forces scrambled into defensive positions. TIE fighters launched into the atmosphere, while stormtroopers manned the defensive outposts and anti-aircraft weapons. Thrawn, however, was already 10 steps ahead. He had analyzed Mustafa's volcanic terrain and pinpointed key weaknesses in Vader's defensive positions. With a series of precise orbital strikes, Thrawn's fleet began dismantling the fortress piece by piece. As the battle raged in the skies above, Vader personally led his ground forces against the waves of Chiss soldiers and droids deployed to Mustafa's surface. With his crimson lightsaber ignited, Vader was a storm of destruction, cutting down platoons of enemy forces with ferocity that seemed inhuman. The molten terrain became an advantage for Vader. Using the Force, he hurled chunks of superheated rock at advancing troops and collapsed entire lava bridges to cut off reinforcements. Thrawn's forces were disciplined and well-trained, but they had never encountered anything like the Dark Lord of the Sith in full rage. Wave after wave of ground forces fell, their screams echoing through the fiery canyons. Yet, Thrawn was unfazed. This was all part of his plan. As the battle reached its peak, Thrawn activated his superweapon. A beam of green energy surged from the weaponized Star Destroyer, cutting through Mustafa's volatile atmosphere. The heat of the beam mixed with the volcanic air, causing the planet itself to tremble. Vader stood on a ridge overlooking the battle, his anger boiling as he saw the weapon begin to charge. He reached out with the Force, trying to sense any way to turn the tide. But even his immense power could not stop the inevitable. Thrawn's voice echoed across the battlefield through the calms. "Lord Vader, your efforts have been valiant, but you must understand, the Sith's reign is over. The galaxy will now belong to order, to strategy, and to survival." Vader let out a roar of fury, hurling his lightsaber into a Chiss walker, cutting it in two. He knew he had been outplayed, but he would not die cowering. The super laser fired. The beam struck the surface of Mustafar, triggering a chain reaction within the planet's unstable core. Lava erupted in massive plumes, consuming the remaining Imperial forces. The ground beneath Vader's fortress collapsed, swallowing the Sith Lord in a fiery inferno. Thrawn watched from the bridge of the Chimera as Mustafar was consumed by fire and destruction. The planet crumbled, breaking apart into chunks of molten rock. His victory was complete, or so it seemed. Despite his triumph, an eerie sensation lingered. The Force-sensitive officers in his fleet reported a disturbance, as if the dark side of the Force still lingered, waiting to strike. Thrawn dismissed their concerns, focusing instead on consolidating his power. Back in the unknown regions, Eli Vanto and the Chiss Ascendancy celebrated the success of Thrawn's mission. The schematics of the Death Star and the dismantled Empire's resources would ensure the survival and prosperity of the Chiss for generations. But in the depths of the galaxy, the dark side churned. Vader's presence was not extinguished entirely. The Sith had always been masters of survival, and though Mustafar was gone, the legacy of Darth Vader was far from over. Thrawn's victory had come at a cost, one that he would one day face. What if Darth Vader captured and trained Cal Kestis? Cal Kestis sat cross-legged on the floor of the Mantis, the hum of hyperspace echoing faintly around him. His breathing was slow, measured, but his thoughts were anything but calm. He stared at the hilt of his lightsaber, his mind replaying the events of the last mission over and over. The chaos, the screams, the way his enemies had fallen before him, almost too easily. He hadn't used the dark side deliberately. At least, that's what he told himself. But when he had been cornered on that Imperial station, surrounded by purge troopers and inquisitors, something inside him had snapped. His anger, his desperation to survive, had boiled over. The Force had surged through him, raw and unfiltered, leaving a trail of destruction in his wake. Now, the faces of those he had killed haunted him. Not just the inquisitors, but the stormtroopers, the soldiers who didn't stand a chance against him. He wasn't sure if it was guilt or satisfaction that gnawed at his soul. "I'm losing myself," he whispered, his voice trembling. What would Seer say? What would Merrin say? The thought of Merrin tightened his chest. Her faith in him had always been unshakable. What would she think of him now? He clenched his fists, feeling the dark whispers in the back of his mind, beckoning him to embrace the power he had felt, to stop running, to stop hiding. "Is this who I am?" Cal muttered. Darth Vader stood in his meditation chamber aboard the Executor, the sterile hiss of pressurized air the only sound in the room. His breathing was steady, but his thoughts churned with curiosity and fury. The report from the Imperial station was troubling. A single Jedi had decimated the entire outpost, leaving nothing but ruin in his wake. This Jedi, Cal Kestis, was no ordinary survivor of Order 66. Vader had seen the reports from the Inquisitors, how Kestis had evaded capture time and again, how he had grown stronger with every encounter. And now, it seemed, the boy had tasted the power of the dark side. A faint smile crept beneath Vader's mask, though it carried no warmth. "The dark side already whispers to him," Vader said, his voice a deep rumble. "He has the anger, the pain, the potential." With a flick of his hand, Vader summoned a hollow projection of the galaxy, narrowing in on the most likely destinations for Kestis to flee. His quarry wouldn't be able to run for long. Vader would find him, break him, and mold him into a weapon of the dark side. "Prepare the fleet," Vader commanded. "Cal Kestis will be mine." Cal landed the Mantis on a desolate forest moon, its thick canopies providing cover from Imperial patrols. The crew had split up to avoid detection. Grease had taken the ship to another system for repairs, and Merrin had gone to secure supplies in the nearest settlement. Cal remained behind, seeking solitude to reflect on the turmoil within him. As he meditated, the Force rippled unnaturally around him. A cold chill ran down his spine, and he opened his eyes just as the shadow of an Imperial Star Destroyer darkened the skies above. His heart sank. He ran to the clearing, igniting his lightsaber as he heard the familiar screech of TIE fighters overhead. Moments later, a shuttle descended, its landing ramp extending. From its depths emerged Darth Vader, his towering form radiating menace. "Cal Kestis," Vader intoned, his crimson blade igniting with a hiss. "You cannot run from your destiny." The battle that followed was brutal. Cal fought with every ounce of skill and power he had, but Vader was a relentless force. Every strike of Cal's blade was met with overwhelming strength. Every attempt to retreat was countered by the Dark Lord's mastery of the Force. Vader wasn't trying to kill him. He was testing him, breaking him. When Cal's lightsaber was finally knocked from his hands, and the Force held him immobilized, he understood the full weight of his situation. "You fight well," Vader said, his voice a cold monotone. "But your resistance is meaningless. The dark side has already claimed you. Submit, and I will show you its true power." Cal glared up at him, defiance flickering in his eyes. But deep down, he felt the pull. The dark side whispered to him, promising him the strength to survive, to never feel powerless again. "I'll never join you," Cal spat. "You already have," Vader replied, his crimson blade crackling ominously as he subdued Cal. Weeks turned to months as Vader took Cal to Mustafar. There, within the suffocating heat of the Sith Temple, he subjected Cal to grueling trials. Torture, manipulation, and relentless combat broke down the Jedi's resistance. Vader exploited every doubt, every fear, every painful memory, twisting them to serve his purpose. Slowly, Cal succumbed. The power Vader offered was intoxicating. For the first time, Cal felt in control, no longer the prey, but the predator. His lightsaber, now blood-red, became a symbol of his transformation. He was no longer Cal Kestis, Jedi Knight. He was Malice, apprentice to Darth Vader. Vader knew that words and pain were not enough. To truly break Cal, he needed to sever the boy's remaining attachments. "You still cling to weakness," Vader said, standing over his kneeling apprentice in the shadowed chamber of his fortress. "Your ties to the past make you vulnerable. If you are to embrace the dark side, you must destroy them." Vader handed Cal his first true test: kill Merrin. Cal's journey to find Merrin was a torment in itself. He located her on a quiet, uncharted world, where she had been hiding and helping refugees of the Empire. The moment he stepped off his shuttle, Merrin sensed him. Her joy at seeing him quickly turned to dread as she saw the darkness in his eyes. "Cal, what's happened to you?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I'm here to finish what I started," Cal said, igniting his crimson blade. Their battle was fierce, Merrin using her Night Sister magic to evade and counter his attacks. But Cal's training under Vader had made him far more dangerous than she remembered. His strikes were brutal and unrelenting, fueled by anger and pain. "Cal, this isn't you," Merrin cried, dodging a devastating overhead strike. "You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do," Cal growled, though his voice wavered with uncertainty. In the end, Merrin fell. Her final words, a whisper of forgiveness, cut deeper than any blade. Vader, satisfied with his apprentice's progress, gave him one final mission: capture Luke Skywalker. Cal tracked Luke to a remote world, where the young Jedi was training in solitude. The ruins were ancient, their jagged spires reaching toward the sky like the fingers of a long-forgotten god. The air crackled with tension as Luke Skywalker stepped into the clearing. His senses were on high alert. He could feel the oppressive weight of the dark side bearing down on him. From the shadows emerged Cal Kestis, or what was left of him. The vibrant energy and hope that had once defined the Jedi Knight were gone, replaced by a cold, simmering rage. His armor was sleek and black, his crimson lightsaber humming ominously in the still air. "So, this is the great Luke Skywalker," Cal said, his voice dripping with disdain. "You don't look like much." Luke regarded him calmly, his lightsaber unlit in his hand. "I've heard of you, Cal. You were a survivor, a protector. What happened to you? What happened?" Cal echoed, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. "I woke up. I saw the truth. The Jedi Code, their ideals, it's all weakness. Power is the only thing that matters." Luke took a step forward, his expression steady but compassionate. "That's not true, and deep down you know it. The Jedi weren't perfect, but we stood for hope, for peace. You stood for those things once, too." Cal's grip on his lightsaber tightened. "Don't lecture me," he snarled, lunging forward with a vicious overhead strike. Luke ignited his green blade just in time, the clash of their sabers echoing through the ruins. The force of Cal's attack pushed Luke back, but the Jedi Master shifted his stance, redirecting the momentum and sending Cal stumbling. Cal recovered quickly, his movements a blend of raw power and refined technique. He attacked with a ferocity that spoke of his training under Vader, precise, relentless, and utterly brutal. Luke countered with fluidity, his strikes measured and defensive, like a calm river resisting the storm. "You've been twisted by the dark side," Luke said, deflecting a rapid series of strikes. "This isn't who you are, Cal. This is exactly who I am." Cal shouted, slamming his saber down with enough force to crack the stone beneath their feet. "The dark side gives me strength. It freed me from weakness." "Strength isn't just about power," Luke replied, sidestepping another attack and countering with a swift slash that forced Cal to retreat. "It's about resilience, about standing firm in what you believe. The Cal Kestis I've heard about wouldn't have fallen this far. Cal growled, leaping into the air and crashing down with a heavy strike that Luke barely dodged. The two combatants traded blows with increasing intensity, their movements blurs of light and shadow. Cal's attacks were relentless, his fury driving him forward, but Luke's mastery of the Force and his calm focus allowed him to anticipate and counter each move. "Stop hiding behind your Jedi platitudes," Cal spat, launching a Force push that sent Luke skidding backward. "You don't understand what I've been through, what I've lost." "I understand more than you think," Luke said, his voice tinged with sorrow. "I lost my family too." "You don't know me," Cal roared, channeling his anger into a powerful Force strike that cracked the ruins around them. The ground shook, and debris rained down as the two warriors continued their duel amidst the chaos. Cal looked up at him, his expression conflicted. The anger was still there, but so was something else, doubt. "You don't understand," Cal muttered, his voice quieter now. "The things I've done, the people I've hurt. There's no coming back from that." Luke knelt in front of him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Everyone deserves a second chance. It's not too late to choose a different path." For a moment, the tension in the air seemed to dissipate. Cal's eyes darted to the ground, his mind racing. Luke's words stirred something deep within him, a memory of who he used to be, of what he used to stand for. But the dark side's hold was strong, and the weight of his actions bore down on him like a crushing tide. I can't," Cal said, pulling away and rising to his feet. Luke stood as well, watching him carefully. "You're stronger than you think, Cal. The dark side wants you to believe you're trapped, but you're not. The choice is always yours." Cal hesitated, his fists clenched. "I don't know who I am anymore." "You'll find your way," Luke said, stepping back. "When you're ready." Cal turned without another word, his mind a storm of conflict. He couldn't return to Vader, not after this. And yet, he wasn't ready to let go of the darkness that had become his shield. As he disappeared into the shadows, Luke watched him go, a mixture of hope and sorrow in his heart. Cal Kestis retreated to Mandalore, seeking refuge on the hidden world he had once dreamed of as a sanctuary. There, he began the long process of rediscovering himself, grappling with the light and darkness within. Though his journey was far from over, one thing was certain. The encounter with Luke Skywalker had planted a seed, a reminder of the Jedi he used to be, and the man he could become once more. What if Darth Vader claimed the Darksaber to rule Mandalore? The throne room of Moff Gideon's stronghold was eerily silent. The faint hum of the dark saber in Gideon's hand was the only sound as the Moff stood before his opponent, Darth Vader. The towering Sith Lord loomed in the dim light, his crimson blade casting an ominous glow. "You overestimate your strength, Gideon," Vader intoned, his voice a cold, mechanical growl. Gideon sneered, brandishing the dark saber. "You think you can simply take this from me? I am the rightful ruler of Mandalore." Vader did not respond. Instead, he raised his lightsaber and lunged. Gideon, while skilled, was no match for the Dark Lord of the Sith. The dark saber clashed against Vader's blade, sparks flying with each strike. But it wasn't long before Vader's raw power overwhelmed him. With a single, devastating strike, Vader disarmed Gideon, the dark saber flying from his grasp. Gideon stumbled back, fear evident in his eyes. "You are no ruler," Vader said, his voice dripping with disdain. "Only a pawn." With a flick of his wrist, Vader's blade slashed through Gideon, ending his life. The dark saber floated into Vader's outstretched hand, its black blade igniting with a low hum. He turned to the Mandalorians present, their helmets reflecting the light of the saber. "I am your leader now," Vader declared. "And under my rule, Mandalore will rise to its rightful place as the ruler of the galaxy." Word of Vader's victory spread like wildfire. The clans of Mandalore, scattered and broken, began to rally behind the one who now wielded the dark saber. Though many harbored resentment toward the Empire, Vader's promise of restoring Mandalore's glory was too powerful to ignore. Vader, as their leader, transformed the Mandalorians into an unstoppable force. Their armor became more advanced, their tactics more brutal, and their loyalty unshakable. System by system, the Mandalorians crushed opposition, claiming planets and resources to strengthen their cause. Vader's speeches to his people were as calculating as they were inspiring. "The Empire fears us because they know what we are capable of. Together, we will not just survive, we will conquer. We will take what is ours by right." As Mandalore's power grew, so did Palpatine's unease. The Emperor observed Vader's conquests with growing suspicion, aware that his apprentice was amassing power to rival the Empire itself. The Mandalorian fleet was vast, and their warriors were unmatched. Palpatine's spies whispered of Vader's ultimate goal, to overthrow the Emperor and seize control of the galaxy. Sidious summoned his inquisitors, all of them, to his throne room. Alongside them stood elite purge troopers and a host of bounty hunters, including the infamous Boba Fett. "You will remind Lord Vader of his place," Sidious hissed. "If he resists, destroy him." Vader, however, was always one step ahead. When the Inquisitors and their forces arrived on Mandalore, they found the Dark Lord waiting for them. The battle was swift and brutal. Vader had anticipated Palpatine's betrayal and prepared accordingly. The Mandalorian warriors, armed with advanced technology and unyielding resolve, tore through the purge troopers and bounty hunters. Vader himself faced the Inquisitors, one by one. The air crackled with the hum of lightsabers and the clash of Beskar steel. Vader dismantled them with terrifying precision, their combined strength no match for his mastery of the Force and his newfound Mandalorian arsenal. As the last Inquisitor fell, Vader addressed the surviving Mandalorians. "The Empire believes they can control us. They believe we will bow. They are mistaken." The Mandalorians erupted in cheers, their loyalty to Vader now absolute. Vader turned his full attention to the Empire. With the Mandalorians at his side, he began capturing key systems, cutting off the Empire's supply lines and dismantling their fleet piece by piece. Palpatine, for all his cunning, found himself on the defensive. The core worlds became the Empire's last stronghold, a desperate attempt to retain control. But Vader's forces were relentless. Finally, the Mandalorian fleet launched a full-scale invasion of the core worlds. Star destroyers burned in the skies, and legions of Mandalorian warriors overwhelmed the Imperial forces on the ground. The throne room of the Imperial Palace on Coruscant was eerily silent, save for the faint hum of distant machinery and the oppressive crackle of dark energy that seemed to radiate from the walls. Darth Vader, clad in black Mandalorian armor adorned with Beskar plates, entered the vast chamber. His crimson lightsaber hissed to life, its light reflecting ominously off the polished floors. In his other hand, the dark saber ignited with a black glow that seemed to pull the very light out of the room. Emperor Palpatine sat on his throne, shrouded in shadow, his yellow eyes gleaming like twin suns of malice. He rose slowly, his voice low and mocking. "So, you come to claim the throne, my apprentice?" Palpatine's tone dripped with venom. "You have forgotten your place. This throne belongs to Mandalore now," Vader declared, his voice cold and resolute. "You have ruled through fear and manipulation, but your time is over." Palpatine's lips curled into a wicked smile. "Arrogance has always been your weakness, Lord Vader. Did you think your Mandalorian toys and baubles would make you my equal? You are still a broken man clinging to shadows." Without warning, Palpatine's hands shot forward, unleashing a devastating storm of Force lightning. The room lit up in flashes of violent blue as the lightning struck Vader's Beskar armor, the energy dissipating but still forcing him back. Vader crossed the dark saber and his lightsaber in an X, absorbing the brunt of the attack. "You cannot stop me," Vader growled, pushing forward against the storm. "I am no longer your slave." The lightning ceased, and Palpatine moved with unnatural speed, his lightsaber igniting in a burst of red. He lunged at Vader, their blades colliding with a deafening crash. Sparks flew as crimson and black clashed in a furious exchange of blows. The room became a maelstrom of destruction. Palpatine moved like a serpent, his blade a blur of crimson as he struck with precision and malice. Vader, wielding both his lightsaber and the dark saber, countered with strength and brutality, each strike of his blades sending shockwaves through the chamber. Palpatine's attacks were laced with cunning. He used the Force to hurl objects from across the room, statues, debris, and shattered panels, all aimed at disorienting Vader. But Vader's mastery of the Force had grown since his days as the Emperor's apprentice. He battered away the projectiles with contemptuous ease, his focus unshaken. "You grow tired, old man," Vader taunted, slashing downward with the dark saber. The black blade carved through the air, its power undeniable. Palpatine sidestepped the blow, his movements deceptively fluid. "And you grow arrogant, as always." The Sith Lord leaped high into the air, spinning as he descended with a ferocious strike. Vader caught the blow with his crimson blade, their sabers locking in a clash that sent tremors through the floor. As their blades locked, Palpatine's hand shot forward, gripping Vader in a crushing Force choke. "You are nothing without me," Palpatine hissed, tightening his grip. "I created you. I gave you purpose." Vader's vision darkened as the pressure around his throat intensified. But instead of faltering, he reached deep into the Force, summoning strength born of rage and determination. With a roar, he unleashed a shockwave of energy that blasted Palpatine across the room. The Emperor hit the wall with a thud but recovered instantly, his laughter echoing in the vast chamber. "Yes, that's it. Embrace your anger, your hatred. You cannot defeat me without it." But Vader didn't respond. He advanced slowly, his blades humming menacingly. The Force swirled around him, a storm of power that threatened to consume the room. Palpatine grew visibly frustrated as Vader's attacks became more relentless. The Dark Lord's strength and precision were unparalleled, and the dark saber's unique energy disrupted Palpatine's defenses. For the first time in decades, the Emperor felt a sliver of doubt. "You have grown strong, my apprentice," Palpatine admitted, his voice strained. "But strength alone is not enough." The Emperor raised both hands, summoning the full fury of the dark side. The room erupted into chaos as tendrils of lightning arced in every direction, the air crackling with raw energy. Vader stood in the center of the storm, his armor glowing red-hot as the lightning struck him. With a defiant roar, Vader thrust the dark saber into the floor. The weapon absorbed the lightning, channeling the energy through its black blade. The ground beneath them cracked and shattered, creating a shockwave that sent Palpatine sprawling. The Emperor rose slowly, his cloak tattered and his face twisted in fury. "You cannot kill me, Anakin," he spat, using Vader's former name like a dagger. "You are too weak to finish what you started." Vader's grip on the dark saber tightened. "Anakin Skywalker is dead. I am what remains." Their final clash was ferocious. Palpatine used every trick in his arsenal, from illusions to devastating Force attacks, but Vader's power was relentless. He drove the Emperor back, his strikes raining down with unyielding ferocity. Palpatine stumbled, his defenses faltering. Desperation flickered in his yellow eyes as Vader loomed over him, the dark saber raised high. "You underestimated me," Vader said, his voice cold and resolute, "and that will be your undoing." But just as Vader prepared to strike, Palpatine's lips twisted into a grin, a twisted, malevolent expression that sent a chill through the air. "Did I?" he hissed, his voice dripping with venom. Before Vader could react, Palpatine raised both hands, unleashing a massive surge of dark side energy. The force of it exploded outward, catching Vader off guard and sending him flying across the throne room. The dark saber skittered from his grip, its black blade extinguishing as it spun across the floor. Vader struggled to rise, but the weight of the Force pressed him down like a crushing tidal wave. Palpatine's laughter echoed through the chamber, his broken body suddenly standing tall, fueled by a surge of power unlike anything Vader had ever felt. "You thought yourself my equal?" Palpatine sneered, advancing with deliberate slowness. "You are a child playing at being a god." Vader clawed at the floor, summoning the Force to push back against the invisible pressure holding him down, but it was no use. Palpatine was in his element now, the room crackling with energy as his power filled every corner of the chamber. With a flick of his wrist, Palpatine summoned the dark saber to his hand. He examined it briefly, a look of disdain crossing his face. "This toy," he said, his voice cold and dismissive, "a relic for lesser beings." With a gesture, he crushed the hilt with the Force, the weapon disintegrating into shards that clattered to the floor. Vader roared in fury, his crimson blade igniting once more as he surged forward. Their blades clashed again, but now the balance of power had shifted. Palpatine moved with precision and speed, his strikes perfectly timed to exploit every weakness in Vader's form. Each blow forced Vader back, the strength of the Emperor's attacks seeming to grow with every passing second. "Your rebellion was futile from the start," Palpatine said, his voice calm and mocking. "Did you really believe you could stand against me? I am the Sith. I am the galaxy." Vader tried to rally, drawing upon the reserves of his strength, but Palpatine was relentless. The Emperor's mastery of the dark side was absolute, and he used it to devastating effect. Lightning crackled from his fingertips, striking Vader with punishing force. Each arc of electricity tore through his armor and flesh, leaving scorched marks and filling the air with the stench of burning. "You were always a pawn," Palpatine spat, driving his lightsaber through Vader's shoulder. The crimson blade seared through armor and muscle, forcing Vader to drop his own weapon. "A blunt instrument to serve my will. And now, like all tools, you have outlived your usefulness." Vader fell to his knees, gasping for breath as Palpatine loomed over him. The Emperor's face was a mask of triumph, his yellow eyes glowing with malice. "Goodbye, Lord Vader," Palpatine said, raising his blade for the final strike. The throne room was silent save for the hum of Palpatine's lightsaber. He looked down at the lifeless body of Darth Vader, once the most feared enforcer in the galaxy, now reduced to a broken shell. With a wave of his hand, the Emperor summoned the pieces of Vader's shattered armor, forming them into a grotesque display that he hung in the throne room as a warning to all who might dare oppose him. News of Vader's death spread quickly, and with it, the last embers of rebellion were extinguished. The Mandalorians, leaderless and broken, were forced to kneel before the Emperor. The systems Vader had captured were swiftly brought back under Imperial control, their leaders executed or subjugated. Palpatine declared himself the supreme ruler of the galaxy, his authority unchallenged. He kept the remains of the dark saber as a symbol of his conquest, reforged into a weapon of fear and dominance. The galaxy, united under his iron grip, became a realm of absolute order, its people cowed into submission by the overwhelming power of the Sith. What if Darth Vader regenerated his body? The fires of Mustafar had nearly destroyed him, but they had also forged him. Yet for decades, the prison of his armor reminded Darth Vader of his weakness, the failure that had consumed Anakin Skywalker. But now, he knelt in the center of his meditation chamber, his breathing steady and his mind alight with the dark side. He pushed deeper into the Force than ever before, past the limits of pain and mortality. Through the endless void of power, he found what he sought: regeneration. Flesh knit itself anew, unburnt and unbroken, tendons reformed, nerves reconnected, and lungs once seared by flame filled with air. His synthetic limbs fell away, replaced by real arms and legs of unyielding strength. When the process was complete, the tall, imposing figure stood unshackled from the confines of the machine. Vader, reborn in the flesh, flexed his fingers and smiled coldly. His body was whole, but his heart remained twisted by the dark side. The galaxy would soon know the true power of the Sith. In the ruins of the Jedha Temple, 7 Jedi gathered in grim silence. The once proud Order, now a shadow of its former glory, had regrouped in desperation. Among them stood warriors who had survived Order 66, seasoned fighters who had lived through the unimaginable. They were preparing to strike against the Empire when they felt it, a presence in the Force, cold and suffocating. "Do you feel that?" whispered a Nautolan Jedi, gripping her lightsaber tightly. "It can't be," said another, a Zobrek with a scar running down his face. "I haven't felt this presence since." A figure emerged from the shadows, tall and cloaked in black, but without the ominous armor that defined Darth Vader. Instead, he resembled someone they thought long gone: Anakin Skywalker. The grizzled human Jedi stepped forward, his voice steady despite the fear that clawed at his heart. "Anakin? It can't be. We thought you were dead." Vader stepped closer, his piercing eyes fixed on the Jedi. "Anakin Skywalker is dead." He reached to his belt and ignited his crimson lightsaber. "And so are all of you." The Jedi formed a defensive circle, their sabers igniting in brilliant hues of green and blue. The Nautolan leapt forward first, her acrobatics quick and fluid. Vader parried her strikes with ease, his movements deliberate and devastating. He sidestepped her final attack and delivered a lethal slash across her chest. The Zobrek and 2 others charged together, coordinating their attacks with precision honed over years of training. Vader spun, his saber a blur of red light, deflecting strikes from all angles. He disarmed the Zobrek with a brutal twist of his wrist before impaling him. A human Jedi attempted to flank him, but Vader reached out with the Force, lifting her into the air. She struggled against his grip, but his power was absolute. With a flick of his fingers, he crushed her windpipe and tossed her lifeless body aside. The last 3 Jedi fought with the desperation of cornered animals, launching a flurry of strikes that would have overwhelmed most opponents. But Vader was not most opponents. He anticipated their every move, his counterattacks precise and merciless. The final Jedi, a Mirialan, dropped to his knees as the others fell around him. "You were the chosen one." Vader raised his saber, his voice cold. No longer, with a single stroke, he ended the Jedi's life. On the barren plains of Sullust, an entire rebel battalion prepared to face the Sith Lord. Word of Vader's return, now free of his infamous armor, had spread like wildfire. The rebels knew they were no match for him, but they hoped their numbers would be enough to overwhelm him. Vader stood in the center of their encirclement, his lightsaber unlit at his side. The rebels surrounded him, blasters trained, tension thick in the air. "Open fire!" the commander shouted. A torrent of blaster bolts erupted from all sides, converging on Vader. He stood still, allowing the bolts to strike. The dark side surged around him, forming a protective barrier that absorbed the energy. The ground beneath him scorched and cracked, but Vader remained untouched. The barrage ceased, confusion spreading among the rebels as they realized their weapons were ineffective. Vader raised his hands, the energy he had absorbed crackling around him. With a deep breath, he unleashed it in a cataclysmic eruption. Flames erupted outward, a swirling inferno that consumed everything in its path. When the firestorm subsided, only Vader remained, surrounded by ash and the charred remnants of the battalion. The twin suns of Tatooine blazed down on the dusty streets of Mos Espa. Vader, now clad in simple black robes, strode through the marketplace. He saw familiar landmarks from a life he had left behind, the junk shops, the pod racing arena. Memories surfaced, but he pushed them aside. His first stop was Watto's shop. The Toydarian looked up from his counter, his eyes widening in recognition. "Anakin, is it really you? I thought you were." Vader raised a hand, and Watto's words choked in his throat. The Sith Lord stepped closer, his voice low and menacing. "Anakin Skywalker is dead. You will join him." With a flick of his wrist, Vader crushed the Toydarian's fragile body, leaving him lifeless on the ground. Vader's rampage continued through the streets, his lightsaber cutting down anyone who dared to cross him. He reached the outskirts of town and turned his attention to the Tusken Raiders. Memories of Shmi Skywalker's death fueled his rage as he descended upon their camp. The Tuskens fought back with ferocity, but they were no match for Vader's power. He moved through their ranks like a storm, his saber carving a path of destruction. He used the Force to hurl entire groups into the air, breaking their bodies as they landed. When the last raider fell, the camp was silent save for the crackle of flames. Finally, Vader turned his attention to Jabba's palace. The Hutt crime lord greeted him with laughter, his grotesque form lounging on his dais. "Vader," Jabba rumbled. "What brings you here?" Vader ignited his saber, the red blade reflecting in Jabba's beady eyes. "Death." The palace erupted into chaos as guards and bounty hunters attempted to defend their master. Vader cut through them with ease, his mastery of the Force allowing him to crush blasters, break bones, and hurl enemies across the chamber. When he reached Jabba, the Hutt bowed his head in submission, but Vader showed no mercy. With a single stroke, he ended the crime lord's reign. Tatooine was cleansed of everything that had tied him to Anakin Skywalker. From his throne on Coruscant, Sidious felt the tremors in the Force. Vader's power had grown beyond anything he had anticipated. When Vader entered the throne room, Sidious rose, his expression a mixture of curiosity and malice. "My apprentice, you have achieved what I thought impossible. But do you believe this makes you my equal?" "I am not your equal, master," Vader replied, his voice calm. "I am your superior." Sidious cackled, raising his hands as a trap was sprung. A force-containing ray shield enveloped Vader, its energy designed to suppress even the most powerful Force users. "You are still a learner, Vader," Sidious mocked. "A new body does not change your place beneath me." But Vader's confidence did not waver. He closed his eyes, drawing upon the full depth of the dark side. The ray shield flickered as cracks formed in the floor beneath him. With a roar, Vader shattered the field, sending shock waves through the chamber. Sidious unleashed a torrent of lightning, but Vader absorbed it, redirecting the energy into a devastating counterattack. The two clashed in a battle that shook the foundations of the palace. Vader toyed with his former master, his strikes precise and relentless. Sidious's attempts to flee were futile as Vader cornered him. In a final, desperate act, Sidious launched a massive storm of lightning. Vader raised his hands, absorbing the energy and stepping closer. "You were right about one thing, Master," Vader said, his voice cold. "The Sith always betray their own." With a final strike, Vader plunged his lightsaber into Sidious's chest, ending his reign. The galaxy had fallen silent in the wake of Palpatine's death. The Sith throne room on Coruscant, once filled with the Emperor's sinister presence, was now dark and empty save for a single figure. Darth Vader stood alone, the faint hum of his crimson lightsaber illuminating his face. The Empire was his now. Every fleet, every world, every soldier bent to his will. Yet, as he gazed out at the sprawling cityscape of Coruscant, he felt no satisfaction. Drop the scenarios you would like to see in the comments, and I will pick one every week. I hope you enjoyed this video. See you in the next one.